You better watch out if your enemies are road ahead of full prophecy to be the greatest beast the world has ever seen. I feed him every day like the bones clean. I feed him all the hate and he grows me. And he gets caught real big, pissed off quick. And if you cross him, you might drop dead. Metaphorically, of course, settling the score. Never getting bored, lots of blood and gold. Always wanting more freedom from the source. They don't really listen until they feel it for their body. And if you start shit, you be heartless in the darkness. Torn apart quick, you left scars ripped. You be chewed up and discarded. And this world ain't right, won't accept it. Negative energy, I expect it. Once it's in your mind, it's infectious. So fight for your life and reject it. You better give me...
Welcome back, everybody. Don't worry, don't panic. You didn't miss anything. We are here. We're never late. Well, maybe a minute or two, occasionally, because we get too busy chatting. We have another amazing episode lined up for you today. It's going to be some very serious storytelling. Our guest has an amazing story to tell, her family history in the fight against fascism throughout World War II. My family also was... I guess, affected by the Nazis. My mom was born in World War II Germany, or occupied Poland at the time. And I have a story to tell along with that. Just because it had, like Mike said, just because it happened 80 years ago it's not that long ago, one thing, and two, doesn't mean it can't happen again if we ignore the symptoms of the disease. And so far, people are waking up. People are waking up. I will admit, at first I was very disappointed with the response. People seemed like they were rolling over and playing dead, but I think as more time plays out and people see how ridiculous this is and how much the current administration aligns with Nazism. I mean, we can't sugarcoat it anymore. Elon Musk pretty much put any speculation to bed when he threw up his hand gesture, his salute, that he was very, very proud of. Yeah, his
love out. Just love out to the crowd.
Yeah, throwing his heart out to the crowd, like we believed that for 1 second. But when he did that, I'll admit, my heart sank. My heart sank because I know what happened, and I'm a big history buff, especially war. My dad grew up in the military. My dad was in Vietnam. He was in Desert Storm. I grew up on 80s war movies, 90s war movies. You know what I mean? We watched R-rated movies from a very young age. But my dad also taught me to be a good person. And I also think that growing up in the military, I grew up in a very diverse environment. And it taught me just to accept people for who they are. You know, see people for just people and not the color of their skin or what religion they are or where they're from.
You don't immediately assume which humans are subhuman that you could subjugate and torture and genocide? Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. But there are people in this country that were raised the complete opposite. They were raised to hate everybody. They were raised, I have to bring this up at the beginning of the show because somebody made a TikTok video about this and it really threw me for a loop. And they are absolutely right. Like the Nazis that we took prisoner during World War II, like the high-ranking ones, even the low-ranking ones, were given more rights and were afforded more dignity than what the Trump administration is currently doing to innocent fucking people. A lot of these people have committed no crime. They are not gang members. And recently, which we'll play the video during the show, they're just abducting people off the street without even immediately identifying that they're police officers. Which they have done a couple times.
Show up in hoodies and masks and just tell people, where are your papers? That's not the most, official looking.
Right, and it seems that Donald Trump is going full-blown bend the knee to Israel because they're now rounding up student protesters that are protested against the genocide in Gaza. And we don't even know where the one guy is.
By protest, just expressing their First Amendment rights. By criticizing a government, which is the essence of the First Amendment.
Right, they're going as far as they're starting to look through social media profiles of people that have ever posted anything bad about like Israel or what's happening. Yeah, or what's happening in Gaza. Notice you see absolutely no media coverage.
That reminds me, I'm going to post something nasty about Israel today.
Yeah, that's a rough topic that I don't want to talk about today because I'll go into a complete tirade as mad as I am about the situation right now. But maybe that was the condition of letting Trump have Gaza. And turn it into a gold shithole. I don't know. We'll never know. But we want to talk about a few things today. One is that Nazism in America is very real, and Donald Trump believes in stuff like eugenics. Elon Musk believes in eugenics, which we've talked about before. We know that Nazis in America are now emboldened enough to even go into neighborhoods that predominantly African American, just to try and provoke a response. And luckily, people are fighting back, and protests are happening all over the country, not just against fascism, but against Elon Musk. Also, big news, tomorrow is the first episode of The Derp State with comedian James Russell. We're doing a third episode every week. Mike can't, unfortunately, do it, but we've asked James to step in, and he was glad to do it. So he's going to be helping me do our third live a week. Man, it's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be so much fun. Yeah, this month's schedule is going to be a little hit and miss with the holiday, and Mike has some family stuff to do. Yeah. But we also are definitely going to be having a protest in Washington, D.C. to celebrate diversity in the military, veterans against fascism. And it's going to be absolutely amazing. I mean, we have a permit approved, I think, for up to 4,000 people. And it's a public park, so if more people just kind of happen to show up, then I don't know. I don't know how it all works, but as long as everybody does what we're supposed to do and is a peaceful protest, we're going to have some amazing speakers, one of which is on the show today.
Yay.
Yes. I'm so excited. We met her. Actually, I met her. We were promoting the protest against fascism in New York. And I was scrolling through TikTok, and I happened to come across TikTok Live. And it happened to be our guest, just talking about the same protest. So I went into the TikTok Live and started spamming the comments until she paid attention to me.
He's really good at that.
And told her that we're going to be there too. We're going to be there too. I wanted to come on the live with her. She's like, dude, I don't even know you. I'm like, ask Matt and Tom about us. They love us. So we ended up meeting in New York, and we had an amazing chat. It was brief because she was very busy speaking. Organizing a protest, making sure everything went off without a hitch. She had a lot of responsibilities. But we're so happy to have her on the show today. So welcome to the show for the first time, comedian and badass activist Laura. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy to have you on the show because your story, I immediately, when you got off the stage, I'm like, I have to talk to her. I have to get her on the show. In my head, it's exactly what I said. Because like my family history is, my family history is also, wrapped up in Nazi Germany. Not obviously, God forbid. That always used to freak me out. Like the thought that some of my descendants, like I'm not, now I found out I'm from Poland, but when I originally thought I was from Germany, I'm like, oh dear God, please tell me I don't have any actual Nazis in my family history. Like that would be devastating. But yeah, so your family history is tied up in the Polish resistance, which I thought was just an absolutely really cool story. My family history is tied up that my mom was orphaned by the Nazis, and a woman, a German woman who was unable to have children because she was forced sterilized by the Nazis because she had, I think, one leg was shorter than the other. That was it. So they were like, you can't have kids. You're defective. You're defective. You can't have kids. So that's how the Nazi thought of disabled people, just if you want any indication.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about you and your family history.
Sure. No, thank you so much for having me on. My pleasure. So as you said, my family was in the Polish resistance. My whole family was a Polish aristocracy in Gdynia, Poland. My family was one of very, very wealthy family in Poland. They had these like really prized horses, on the family land. And apparently like Haile Selassie, my great grandfather, had wolves roaming the land instead of guards to protect the horses.
That's awesome.
And I'm just like, Jesus, like, yo, that is extra. Okay.
Let's get the wolves to do it.
That's and my great grandfather was Florian, and my grandfather was the youngest of 5 children, and my grandfather was as he was called, for anyone who's Polish out there, he was called a Räuber, and he was a little troublemaker. That's one of my favorite stories of my grandfather. Was he was 4 years old, and there was this parade where other people from like other countries were like coming through and everything, and they were like on the top balcony of like some something that they had. And my grandfather, and I didn't know that they had them at this point, but he said we had water balloons. And I was like, you had water balloons in the 30s? And he was like, yeah, we did. And I was like, okay, new for me. I didn't know that. And he said, I dropped a water balloon on the protest. On the parade. He was like, I dropped a water balloon on the parade of like all of like these ambassadors coming in. And he was like, the police really quickly came up and were like, excuse me. And
amazing.
Myron, stop. But my grandfather would like go and like play with the wolves because he thought he was one of them.
Well, there's a movie about him.
Right, we need to talk about this.
Apparently, my great grandfather like went searching for Myron one day, and he was just like, "Where the fuck is this kid?" And then found him in the barn playing with the wolf pups. Like, and the wolf mom was like in the back, and like my great grandfather grabbed like a pitchfork and was like, "Myron, just come here."
He was probably safe as hell. Yeah, he was safe. If that mom wasn't okay with it, the reason he was safe is because he was there. Otherwise, the mom would have made sure he was not there. But if he was playing with the puppies, that was the safest kid in the whole place.
So that's my grandfather's vibe. Is that's who he is. He was just this little troublemaker. And even like he was that person who he would walk in a room and everyone would know was in charge. Like that was just the vibe. He was that kind of human. He just was born with this innate sense of confidence and audacity that we just all were like, where the who pumped you with that much sugar? Like, dude. And that was just who he was. So the war started when he was 9 years old, and as we all know, the start to the war was the Poland was invaded by Nazis, and then a little while later, then the Soviets invaded from the West. Yep. And also the start of the war. So my family then fled Gdynia, and they went to Warsaw. Which that right there, I believe that's a picture of Warsaw after being decimated.
Yep.
So that would have been probably after the Warsaw Uprising.
Interesting.
That wouldn't have been in the initial invasion. Okay. I bet that was probably after the Warsaw Uprising. That's my guess. Because that's when Warsaw was like literally in crumbles.
Just decimated.
But so they fled to Warsaw, and how my grandfather always said it was randomly and suddenly my great grandfather opened up a pots and pans shop in the middle of for anyone in Poland, it would be in Old Town of Warsaw. And so it was in the Old Town for, again, anybody who is in Poland. If you are not the big town square in Warsaw, but like the smaller one that is like kind of next to it, where you have like that big, like old, like kind of white cathedral, that's where the pots and pan shop was for anyone who's there. Anyone in Poland, anyone in Warsaw, I hopefully will know what I'm talking about. It's by a beautiful hotel now. It's a very lovely part. Warsaw is just, it's stunning right now. They did an incredible job. But so he opened up this pots and pan shop, and my grandfather was like, why the fuck are you doing that? Like, you've never sold pots and pans, like what? And my great grandfather was like, Myron, don't come into the shop, stay away. Just don't come here. Oh. And he was like, okay. And of course, my grandfather was like, bullshit. I'm going to figure this out. So he was a tool. Now, in the start of the war, how my family first kind of like felt it, like, because we had a lot of our family who were involved in politics. And all of the politician family members were immediately sent to Auschwitz for death immediately. So that was my family. So it was like he said, like a bunch of his uncles immediately killed.
That's crazy. I've been to Auschwitz as a child. My parents took us because when we were stationed in Germany, we used to go visit my grandmother, and one of the trips we took was over to Auschwitz. And I remember even as a kid just getting this god awful feeling of. I honestly, I don't even, still to this day, I don't know how to explain it because I was little, but to this day, it's like a core memory of mine of the feeling I got when I was there. So yeah, just the fact that they're trying to erase it just infuriates me. They're trying to pretend it didn't happen now.
So we visited Auschwitz when I was 4, and my mom was like, she's not going in. And so there's a photo, it's upstairs. I have to post it online because it's really fucking creepy. There's a picture of me playing in the field outside of Auschwitz, and you can see Auschwitz right in the back, and I'm literally like picking dandelions.
Wow. You know
it's really
what's
creepy.
interesting
Like
about
I need to post it online because it's weird.
What's really interesting about that is obviously we're all people that love history here, so I'm sure we've all seen it. Those normalizing photos of Germany at the time where these horrible things are happening, and it's pictures of people just eating dinner, people just dining. So that those people were still doing that on the grounds of Auschwitz. The kids of those officers were just running around playing.
Oh yeah, they were running around. And also, like, I know because my grandfather told me, he was like, I was probably standing on like a landfill of bodies, because outside of Auschwitz they would have like these giant ditches where they would just like all the bodies they would just like incinerate. And so like I'm standing there going like, so as an adult I'm looking back going like, I'm standing on a mass graveyard right now picking flowers. And it's a very interesting photo, but like I understand, like my mom was like, she's not going in at 4. She's not doing that. I haven't as an adult been inside Auschwitz, and I would really like to. I would too later, but like my grandfather also was in Mauthausen, and till his death, he was just like, and for anyone who doesn't know about Mauthausen, it is recorded as like the most brutal of the concentration camps. It was on a quarry, and there were these very, very, look it up, it's called like the stairs of death. And it was the huge staircase that you would literally just pick up a boulder and go walk up and down the stairs with it, like, and put it up at the top. Oh my God. And he always was like, I want to watch all of you go walk up those stairs. He was like, I did that multiple times a day. You go do it now. And he was like, I want to watch you do it. And we're like, all right, dude, we get it. We get it. You go walk up the stairs and go, wow, this is hard.
That's a whole different. I went to school in the snow uphill both ways. That's a totally different take on that.
I mean, granted, I think it was like, he in the winter in Austria was carrying this like giant, probably like 50-pound boulder on his back. And he's like, the stairs were really, and he was like, always like, the stairs were super steep. And he was like, and if you didn't pick up a big enough boulder, they would beat you and then make you carry a bigger one. So he's like, it always have to be big. But yeah.
Question is, why was there smaller boulders? It's almost like it was intended to just torture and humiliate.
It was. Torture. I mean, that was the thing. You either were immediately killed in a concentration camp, or you were meant to die as enslaved labor. It was one of the two.
That was it.
That was it. Those were the choices. But so anyway, my family got to Warsaw, and then first round of family members were killed immediately, and then so my great-grandfather opened up that pots and pans place, and then my grandfather was like, I was hearing about the Polish underground, and he was like, I want to go do that. I want to go fight Nazis. Fuck you.
I like him already.
This little 10-year-old who was just like, yeah, let's do it. And what he didn't know though was his entire family joined. No one knew each other was in it. And so he's one of 5.
That's how it had to be.
All of his siblings joined secretly, every single one of them. So we had my grandfather, who was the youngest, who joined the Scouts, which was essentially the antithesis of the Hitler Youth.
Yep.
Then his older brother, Guccio, was also in the Scouts at first, too.
What a great name.
Guccio?
Yeah.
It's a good name. Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's a badass name.
Yeah.
And then you had Danka and Olga, his older sisters, who were nurses in the underground. And then his older brother, Renio, was a code breaker.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so, and they were all young, like super, I mean, they were kids. I think the eldest, Guccio, was like, I think he was 18 in 1944. So, I mean, like, and Guccio was the oldest. So, I mean, they are young ass kids who are all there. So they all joined in secret. My grandfather, Myron, they all had code names, and my grandfather's code name was Viherik, which means a mighty wind.
Write this movie. Stop.
I
know.
I've already had a production company interested in pitching it, and I'm like, the title is going to be Viherik. I'm like, it has to be.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So So he joined the Scouts, and he said we had a few jobs. And he joined specifically the battalion Owaza. Awaz's job, because the Polish Underground had lots of different battalions, and they all did different things. Awaz's job was it needed to disrupt a highway that the Nazis used a lot. And I actually have the emblem here. This is for Uwaza.
Wow. That's awesome.
That is really cool.
And so what my grandfather would do is his job was disrupt the highway. Great. I think I fucked up my camera. Hold on.
You're good.
Not focusing on me. So
The dart autofocus.
Now I'm allowed to be like talk about violent things on here. That's cool, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
yeah. I mean,
no one for me to not talk about like death and like I'm about to explain how my grandfather killed Nazis.
So we don't monetize our lives because we can't not curse. So I don't think violence is that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, for everybody, anyone, you're about to hear how my grandfather killed Nazis. So just FYI. So what he would do, and his like little troop, his little scout troop would do, was we all know that the Nazis used motorcycles a lot. So what they would do is tie wires from trees to trees.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, it's not funny.
And
I'm sorry.
I know. And my grandfather would be like, and then he'd be like, they die easily, and then you get free guns. And
Hey, it's funny if you're not a Nazi, so.
Oh, God.
And
I'm sorry, for some reason, just picturing a Nazi driving a motorcycle at night, being like, somehow gives me a little bit of joy.
It's a quick, clean death. And
Right, it's humane. We'll call it that.
Honestly, it was probably one of the most humane ways to die at that time.
And
And so,
Yeah.
because the number one job was to disrupt the highway, but also gather weapons.
that's
Because
funny. Supplies are always what win a war.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Always.
And for people who don't understand, Poland was completely abandoned. Once the Nazis and the Soviets were occupying, no other country was helping Poland. Poland was left to rot.
Cut off, yeah.
That was it.
It was off. And for people to understand the level of like death that Poland was facing, it has been estimated that during World War II, 5.5 million to 6 million Polish people died. Now that includes 3 million of those Polish citizens were Jewish.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a ton of like understand that.
Just so people understand, Poland
still, it was specifically like 5.5, 6 million Polish citizens were killed. Like that is an insane amount that Poland was targeted. Just to give you like a sense of the death and destruction Poland was facing. Like Hitler really had it in for Poland in a very, very sick and twisted way. So my grandfather continued. So his job was get weapons. So great. We can pick off guns off of dead Nazis. Perfect. But we can't just but they also had to be careful not to just be killing Nazis left and right. Because what would end up happening, like if you were in Warsaw and somebody killed an officer, then what they would do is in a van, drive around, pick up 15 citizens and have
just
them in the
executed. Yep.
So you had to be careful on how much like war you were actively waging on. You had to be very careful about it. So one of the things that he also did, he was like very effective. And again, he's like 11, 12 now at this point. He said if you would go up behind a Nazi officer, he would take a little gun with his hand, stick it in their back, and in German yelled, "Hand it off." And he was like, if you speak with enough confidence, you can get away with anything. And he was like, literally,
could you imagine?
Their guns.
They get he's out there jacking Nazis with finger guns. That's insane. That's just picturing that is insane.
Just straight up.
Give me your shit.
For anybody who's just always like, Laura, how do you have that much confidence and audacity? I'm like, that was who raised me. Was
right.
Like, defeat Nazis with finger guns. Like, it's.
That's cool.
We do have.
That might be the coolest thing I've ever heard.
We have a quick question for you, Laura. Do you have any knowledge of the government's power grab that took place of land, crops, cattle from wealthy farms?
Well, I mean, like they were completely. I mean, my family had a farm as well, so they definitely had land, and they had like this huge house. So they took over my family's like mansion. They took over their farmland completely. They used it as like a house for Nazis. They were bringing in like horses into my family's house and everything.
Ultimate insult.
Yeah, they really did. And we're just like, fuck you. This was a nice house.
Literally, fuck you with these two fingers.
Yeah, no. So then what they would also do is my grandfather actually feels really bad about this one, though. He said that they also basically terrorized the Hitler Youth. And he was like, he always is like, I feel bad about that because they were kids. They didn't know what they were doing. Like, he was like, fucking baby Nazi, whatever. But
baby Nazi.
It's a baby Nazi. So if we all saw Jojo Rabbit, we all know that Hitler Youth carried around those big knives. So he was like, we would just bully back them into a corner and steal their knives.
That's great.
And he was like, and he always said, he was like, I did feel bad because he's like, I'm sure they got beaten like hell.
I bet.
Sure they did. And one of the things that my grandfather really in perspective had, he was like, he actually felt very bad for the Nazis. He always said, he was like, I felt really bad because they were brainwashed and they had no idea what they were doing. He was like, the children.
It is true.
That's so important because I'm not advocating compassion for Nazis, and I'm talking not just historically, I'm talking now too. We have to understand why they are the way they are and how it happened. Yeah. That doesn't mean we give them a pass, but understanding and feeling bad makes sense.
But two things can be true at once. We can understand why they are the way that they are and understand so that we don't do it again.
Bingo.
But we also do not, we also don't we hold them accountable. But, and my grandfather into his later years was like, he always was like, they were absolutely brainwashed. He was like, they had no idea what they were doing. And he always said most of the Nazis, he was like, were terrified children. He was like, scared kids.
Why? I was gonna say, there's a great movie. I'm into movies, like especially about World War II and World War I, and any war movie really. Obviously, Schindler's List is at the top of the list of all-time amazing movies about World War II and the atrocities that happened. But one good movie that I thought was from a young Nazi soldier perspective was All Is Quiet on the Western Front. I think it's called.
Yep.
I've heard of
and
that.
It's on Netflix. I think it was on Netflix. I
saw it a long time ago.
It is epic, but it showed these kids, they were so proud to serve the fatherland because they thought of this glorified version of war where they were just kicking everybody's ass and they couldn't be stopped. And then these young kids sign up and end up just watch the movie. It is graphic.
And that's the thing. Like, obviously, there were a lot of Nazis that were just fucking evil as shit.
Absolutely.
But there were a lot of them that genuinely, they had no idea.
The way this works is you have a smaller force willing to take over government, media, and whatever to brainwash the larger population. You need the support of the larger population because then it looks legitimate and you have backing.
No, absolutely. All right, so continuing on. So now one of the things that my grandfather also did was he had to deliver messages. That was a big, big piece of it. Now, he always said,
that's scary.
What was there. I had no idea what I was doing. He said a big thing was no one had any idea. We only knew our only job. He was like, that was it. We couldn't know anything else because people were getting tortured left and right. And he was like, the only way to save everybody and yourself is if you genuinely didn't know. So, well, one of the ways, like, and this is going to get really dark, everybody, so just hang in there. When he was very drunk, it's kind of torture methods was because the Nazis loved hurting people in front of other people. He was like, that was their favorite method.
Well, that's how they show it. They don't hide it. They make you see it.
One of the things that they would do is like pick up random kids, hold the two arms, and just pull.
Yep. That's fine.
And as a way to get information, he'd be like, if you don't tell us the information, this is what we're doing to the kid. I mean, it was, and like, he only like told us that like when he was 91 and really drunk, like it was one of the worst things for
him. You know what? There's worse things that he couldn't even say.
It was, and I'm like, and the thing is, like, people don't understand is like the shit that they've put in the movies is not even the worst of it. Like,
no.
As the descendants.
That's what they put in so they could get it rated R, not rated X.
Exactly. It's like the shit that was actually happening in the camps and what was I'm like, they've never portrayed it. So what he did was, so he would deliver messages. And so specifically what he did was, there was a church, because my family was Catholic. And so he was an altar server at this church that was right next to the wall of the Jewish ghetto. And he was like, perfect alibi. So what he would do is, during mass, while he's like doing his little altar server duties, he would run out, deliver the message to all of the Jewish people in the ghetto, then come back. He would also deliver weapons. And then he would run right back in. And he was like, it was perfect. No one would ever expect it. Everyone was in church. No one was out on the street. And no one would ever guess that in the middle of my altar serving, I was doing underground work.
As a kid.
As a kid.
As a kid. That's what blows me up. That's why my jaw is like,
I'm trying to figure out.
Intimidating.
We as a country, and I know the answer is no, are even remotely ready to talk about this historically, let alone realize that we are not as far away from this in our own country as we want to believe. We're
not.
That's why
we're not. Like our children are going to be doing the shit that my grandfather was doing.
And like, people can't accept that. People are still like, well, you know, I mean, you're not going to have toilet paper. That's the least of your worries. You're not going to have food. You're not going to have security in your life.
So my grandfather would also express anger, because he said he knew a lot of people who were just like, if you're just nice to the Nazis, nothing bad will ever happen to you. Like, just be kind, just be respectful.
Complacency.
And he said it would literally drive him batshit. He said, he was like, are you, and they would literally go like, we don't want to harm anyone. We don't want to do that. And he was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you shitting me? Are you even as like a kid, he was like, I have no tolerance for this. He was like, I have none. So it drove him bonkers. And it still drove him whenever he talked about it, because like, I think even like as an adult, he was like, I have no reason to defend this. It was so clear, like, even while Warsaw was getting occupied by the Nazis, and people were just like, no, let's just be nice, it'll be fine. So even in that, the Polish citizens, some Polish citizens were like, it's fine.
Sounds familiar with what's going on today, doesn't it?
Now he doesn't know what was in those messages that he was delivering to the Jewish people in the ghetto. We think he may have been helping a ring of getting Jewish people out of Poland. We think that's what it was, because he said, he was like, I remember a priest that, like, he was like, I remember a priest was smuggling Jews out of Poland. So we were like, okay, so if he's doing that while he's altar serving and he knows that, then probably he was actively involved in it, just had no idea. So that's why we think that, but we don't know. So it could have literally been anything, but that's what we think makes the most sense, given other pieces that he knew.
Right.
Then, so what ended up so a little while later, now he is 12 years old, and he becomes an official soldier in the Warsaw Uprising, in the Polish Underground.
At 12.
At 12 years old, and he was so proud. He said it was his proudest moment ever.
I've accomplished nothing with my life.
I know, right? Because before he was just a scout, now he's a real soldier. And he said his first job was he had to hide in this tall grass by the Wisła River, which is like this giant river that runs around Warsaw. And he said he had to hide in this very tall grass, and he had to watch this bridge for a few days and count how many times the Nazis crossed the bridge. And
going on stealth missions at 12. That's crazy.
So he said he was eaten up by mosquitoes so horribly, and he's like, but I didn't care because I was a soldier and I was going to do my job.
Well, so that's
amazing.
An interesting thing. And all right, when you look at a country going into another country, that invaded country has this sense, you hope, of a national pride, a national desire to protect oneself, a unity to fight back. I don't know what's going to happen in this country when we enter that stage, because we're not going to necessarily need kids to be spying on bridges, because we have technology that we will be able to access and use even when the lights go out.
Yeah.
But the resistance in the U.S. is going to fight an uphill battle because we don't have that identity. We're not just going to be fighting an outside invader. We're going to be fighting people with the same flag on their front porch.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be fighting our neighbors. And I mean, it's Civil War 2.0, but now we actually have technology.
Yeah, which makes it worse, actually.
Oh,
almost.
It does.
Yeah.
So now we are at the point. My grandfather is 14 years old. And so my grandfather's 14 now, and the Warsaw Uprising happens. And now you guys have to understand, for anyone who's listening, Poland had nothing. They had nothing. And they were they had no as I said, they were gathering scraps of weapons, and they had to hold off the Nazis. So here's the fun story. My grandfather kept hearing, he kept hearing the name Max. Max is in charge. Max is the general. Like, Max is the leader of Owaza. We have to report. Like, he would hear the name Max a lot. And he was like, who the fuck is Max? And then then it was like the day. So now it's like Warsaw Uprising. We're in war. Everyone has to now meet in the town square, like in this location at this time. We're going to get orders. So now it's like everyone's going to know who's in the underground because it's war.
It's the reveal, the official,
and he shows up, and Max is his dad. Max.
No, I want to watch this movie, please. Let me.
He realizes, and he sees his sisters. He sees his and he was like, we're all fighting in the same battalion, and none of them had any idea, and they were all fighting under.
Think about that. So you were talking children, essentially, and they knew enough that they were in this secret, powerful, necessary freedom-fighting organization. They didn't even tell, little kids didn't even tell their little sister, their older brother.
That never happens.
They're all doing it because they knew the severity of it. See, that's the thing, is we, in this country, in this time, in 2025, have become, I've seen these words being used in our chat and all over the place we've used it, complicit, apathetic. We're so tuned to thinking that cartoons answer everything, teachers are assholes, we have nothing to learn, I just want to be left alone and do what I want to do. But you're so connected to your community that the importance of feeling I need to fight for it. I need to fight for my family. I need to fight for something bigger than myself. I don't know how many kids and people have that nowadays. Now, I do believe Gen Z has seen enough and developed it due to the chaos they have grown into.
Gen Z's voting habits are not looking good right now.
They're not, but Gen Alpha knows nothing but this. Okay, they exist and became cognizant in a time when Donald Trump was president. That's all they've ever known. So I think Gen Z is one or the other. I'm not sure how they're going to go, but Gen Alpha is the group of kids that I think would be able to not run and tell their sister or their brother or someone that they're fighting for freedom. And maybe that's what we have to get back to. This is why history is important. This is why your family's history is important. More people have a story like this in their lives than they can imagine, because their parents don't talk about it or because the kids don't ask about it.
Right.
We need to bring this back and make it a living history. And before it's too late.
We can't ignore history.
Well, I will say, like, my grandfather said that, like, especially in Poland, they had their motto was God, country, family. And he was like, and that was what was really, like, pushed into them, was God, country, family. And I asked him, I was like, why did you sign up for the Polish Underground? Like, why did you? And his reaction was literally, as a trans woman, 100%, absolutely, to the person, Mud, who just commented, 100%. And so my grandfather, when I asked him, why did you do this? Like, what was your reasoning? And he said, because I was Catholic. And I was like, what? And he was like, it would be a sin not to fight for your fellow countrymen. It would be a sin.
Oh, so using religion for good? Wow.
I know.
No way. That is possible, by the way.
Back that fucking Christianity. Where's that Catholicism?
Yeah. I think it's been a long time since many people have seen the empathetic part of religion.
I'm not a big advocate in any way of religion, although the people that can derive goodness from it, I have no problem with. And I think it's pretty obvious now that American Christianity has been trying to beat out and groom out the goodness so that we could get a support for someone like a Donald Trump.
The Vatican has said American Catholicism is not it. Yeah. But my grandfather was very, like, he was like, no, he was like, we would be like bad Catholics if we didn't fight. He would be like, we would be bad Catholics.
Right.
That was how he thought of it. And he was like, it would be a sin not to stand up for our fellow countrymen.
Someone just said on Instagram, sorry to interrupt, historical reality is better than fiction. Also, the same person, growing up in communist Cuba is no picnic either.
I can't imagine.
Let's broaden it before we get back to the story and say this is really a history of people fighting oppression. Okay, that's what this story is, and that's what history is, because there's always been people that just think the right answer is to control others so they can sleep happy at night. They only care about themselves, and they think subjugating everyone based on whatever arbitrary reason at that time makes sense to them. But we understand, look at what Elon Musk said, right? Compassion is the enemy of civilization, or whatever nonsense he said. No, compassion is what makes civilization into a society. Civilization is just a group of people moving together, building houses towards a goal. It doesn't have to be good or bad, but to me, a society, a functional one, is about building a community of all people to better everyone. Right now, what World War II was, what the invasion of Poland was, what all of this was a small group of assholes thinking they could take everything for themselves so it's better for them. I don't want what anyone else has unless it's peace and happiness. What I want is everyone to be together and be peaceful and happy and succeed. And that's what we're fighting, is a future for everyone or a future for an arbitrary few. And I think there are some people throughout history that innately seem to understand that. Your grandfather as a child seemed to not need to be taught that lesson. And I think we need more of that. We need to find people that just get it and promote those people.
My grandfather said that a sense of a moral compass was really put into him. Was very, very put into him. And he remembers like those talks with his father and everything. He was like, my parents made us work as well. Like they were aristocracy, but he was like, we worked on the farm because our parents were like, no, you're going to go fucking do that.
They made them understand what they have.
Well, he said a really good lesson that his father taught him was there was like a chimney sweep that came into the house, and my grandfather was like, oh, he's dirty, ew. And my great grandfather said, no, he has worked. He is wearing honor on him right now.
Nice.
Fuck.
And
man, I wish people would say that about all the immigrants that we just kicked out of this country who pick our food.
And my grandfather always said, like, as an old man would be telling me, he was like, I remember that changing my brain chemistry, going, no, the soot was honor. And he was like, that changed my life. He was like, immediately, he was like, his parents were very, very good with that.
That's awesome.
So then now very early on in the Warsaw Uprising, we faced travesty in our family. I believe it was on the second day of the Warsaw Uprising. So my great uncle Renio was a code breaker. The Nazis ambushed them first. They found them. And it was a bunch of basically like teenage boys. And they made them march in the back of the building, dig their own graves, and machine gun them down.
Oh my God.
And my great uncle Renio was about 16 at the time. And if anyone in Poland wants to go, there's actually a beautiful, beautiful memorial. It's called Polmary. And it has all the names of the boys who were doing it with their age as they passed away. And you'll see my great uncle Renio on there as well.
That's crazy.
And his cousin was also a code breaker as well. And when they found them, they found Renio and his cousin like holding and hugging each other as they were killed.
Wow.
So that was my grandfather losing like that one. And he still like, that was one he held on to really hard.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't mention at first was that I do want to, that my grandfather always wanted to mention as well, was he thinks a piece of his survival, and he was like, this was a plus and a minus for him. He said he was so young when the war started, he didn't fully grasp how serious it was. Mm-hmm. He said he was shot at all the time. He said he was obviously doing very serious things. He in his head was like, no one's going to kill a kid. And he like thought it was a game dodging bullets. Wow. He thought it was fun. So for him, he really didn't take it that seriously. And for him, and he's like, it was stupid, but also probably saved him because he was like, one, it made me, I had no problem doing these things because he was like, I didn't see the problem with it, which he was like, which was stupid as hell. He was like, the fact that I lived was amazing. Mm-hmm. But he said also because his little brain didn't input how serious it was, he said that he thinks that's also what helped him probably process everything a lot more safely as he got older.
He didn't fall into the darkness of what was actually happening.
He didn't. No, he really, really didn't. And we always wondered how. And he was like, I think I was just too young and an idiot to understand what was going on. And he was like, I think that's why.
Well, that same person who said those other things on Instagram, the Cosmic Cuban, which is a great name, said your grandfather was a true humanitarian. I just wanted you to
Thank
that.
You.
That's really cool.
I agree. So now we are in the Warsaw Uprising, and it's devastating. Like, now you have to understand, this is Poland fighting with scraps, holding off Nazi Germany, and they're doing it. They are actually holding them off. Like, they are in this. The Warsaw Uprising started in July, and they held them off for, how long was the Warsaw Uprising? Quick Google search. Like, I know it was more than a month.
Oh, Jeremy's on it.
Yeah. This is why I like ChatGPT.
I think it was 2
How
months.
long was the Warsaw Uprising?
I know it started in July. If you ever go to Poland,
63 days.
How many days?
63 days, exactly.
63 days.
Also, Jeremy, this one's for you, this comment.
So 63
yeah, I'm sorry, World War One.
The Polish underground held off fucking Nazi Germany. Like, that was how much, and he was like, we were fighting with nothing, but we were fighting for our lives. And he said they would literally, the Germans would be they would be catapulting oil and fire at them. They were dropping bombs on them. One of the things that he said that they did, though, was they used to fly, the Nazi fighter jets used to fly really, really low to deliver the bombs. They would fly really, really low, and they flew low enough where they were actually able to shoot the pilot.
Really?
Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah.
If anybody wants to learn more, I highly suggest going to Warsaw and actually visiting Fort Dąbrowski. They have incredible pieces of World War II history. They show how the Polish underground was able to fight. The Warsaw Uprising museums are amazing, but I highly suggest Fort Dąbrowski as well. It's just really, really incredible. They have all these tanks and everything. Like, it's very interesting. So we are now moving our way through the Warsaw Uprising. We are in full war. We're in full fighting mode, everything. Now, this is where my family is separated, and no one has any idea. And, like, people didn't know. My great uncle Guccio and my grandfather were captured together, and they were captured as political prisoners, and they were sent to Auschwitz.
Wow.
Then my 2 great aunts were captured together as well, and they were sent to a work camp. I don't know which one. They had no idea what happened to my great-grandfather. What we have found out was he was killed in the last few days of battle towards the end of the uprising. And he's in this very beautiful mass grave honoring the Polish underground soldiers. I can actually pull it up. For anybody who is in Warsaw and you want to go see it, it's on the other side of the Wisła River. You will understand if you're there what that means. And it's just this big, giant graveyard. Hold on. I have all the pictures. We went to the 75th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising.
Oh, wow.
Because my grandfather and all the survivors were being honored. It
Wow.
was really beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. And it was very healing for my grandfather.
Oh,
he was able to get some closure, which was really great.
Not easy.
No. Where the hell is it? Come on. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I don't see if no.
I don't know if it'll focus.
This might not end up working, and I might have.
Yeah, it's not focusing. That's all right.
Okay, we tried. But yeah, so he's there, and he's under his code name Max. So it's MAKS.
That's so cool.
And you can hear, like, Max is mentioned in a lot of the Polish underground books as, like, one of the leaders. So if you see MAKS, Max is my grandfather, for everyone. And he's mentioned in, like, the Warsaw Uprising Museum and stuff under the code name. But his real name is Florian.
That's awesome.
And so my great-grandfather and my great-uncle go to Auschwitz. They're on the train. They get there, and Gucho tells Myron, because my grandfather's 14 at the time, and he's like, "You're 16 now. You are 16. Do you understand me?" And my grandfather was like, "Why?" And he was like, "You are 16. Do not ask me again." And he was like, "All right, whatever." And he said, and my grandfather was a pretty big kid. Like, he was very tall, very strong, so he could pass for 16. And they asked, like, "How old are you?" And he said 16. And they said, "Okay, go over there." And he's like, "That probably saved me from the crematorium." He was like, because they were just killing kids at that point. They were getting,
That's
at that
crazy.
point, they were so over flooded at the concentration camps.
Yeah, they just.
Now, they didn't give my grandfather or my great grandfather a tattoo. They didn't do the number tattoo. He said, one, we were political prisoners. So we weren't going to get one. But he was like, also, there were just too many people coming in at that point.
Just stopped even accounting for them.
No, I mean, he said he did have a number, and he could remember his number up until like he was at like 88, and then he was like, "Fuck, I forgot." And like he could remember, like if you asked him at like 75, "What's your number?" he would drop like a hat, and he would immediately remember it still.
That's crazy.
Remember. Now, so they're in Auschwitz, and they are now. So they were used for slave labor. They were not immediately sent to extermination. And he said that the crematorium, he's like, "I will never forget the smell." He was like, it was the most rancid, disgusting smell. He said one of the most hard parts was like seeing people throw themselves on the electric fence and burning to death. And they were tasked with like building more railway. He was like, "So that's what we did all day. We just built a fucking railway." And he said the food was, it was like moldy bread in the morning, plus a cup of dark water, which was coffee, quote unquote. For lunch, it would be sort of this like a very lame version of soup. It was considered a gift from God if there was a carrot in there. And then at night, it was more moldy bread and dark water. And he was like, and that was it. And it was like, obviously it was not good. He tried to escape, was caught, and he was strung up naked for 3 days.
Wow.
As punishment. They took him down, but my grandfather, being just
like medieval shit,
he was like, "I'm gonna go do it again to try and stop me." So he tried to escape again, but by this time the Nazis realized, oh, physical pain's not working for him. Got it. So then they grabbed his brother, beat his brother in front of him, and then he was like, "All right, I won't do that again. Never mind."
Yep.
Like,
wow.
they knew how to do it. They knew how to do it. They were just awful that way. So then they were in Auschwitz for a while, and then they were transferred to Mauthausen, which was what we talked about with the quarry. And he definitely said shit got weird. He said my grandfather was a blonde, blue-eyed kid, and he said like they were saying things to him that were like, if you behave well, do you maybe want to be one of us? Like, do you want to do this? And he was like, "No, thank you. I'll stay here. Bye." No, I don't want to be one of you. Thank you.
Wow.
Because the Germans were dying so much, they needed replacements, and my grandfather looked incredibly Aryan.
The blonde hair, blue-eyed look. Yep.
Now my grandfather did say, he was like, honestly, because I was like, "How mean were the guards to you?" And he was like, "Honestly, the worst ones were the capos." He was like, "They were the fucking worst." Basically, the capos were another prisoner that was like assigned to be like a head of like their unit of prisoners.
The worst of the worst. Yeah.
And a lot of the capos, and he's like, what I think happened was they wanted to be like, "See, I'm one of you." And he was like, they would like beat us harder than the actual Nazis to like show their loyalty.
And they just couldn't understand. Their fear could not let them see that they were just being used, so that the guards didn't have to get blood on under their fingernails.
You think we see maybe I think we should rename MAGA into capos, but
Ooh. That's fine, right?
Well, that's definitely what the Proud Boys are.
Yeah.
100%. But he said that the capos were like, he was like, hands down, they would beat us harder than the SS. He was like 100%, because they were using that as an opportunity to save their own skins. So then what happened was he went to a satellite location of Mauthausen. So he was transferred. Now they're building a fighter jet. And he was in Vienna at this point. So Mauthausen was in Austria, someplace outside of Vienna. So now he's in Vienna. And he said at this point now he's getting sick. He is getting a pneumonia, and he's like, shit. And he knows that they have a medical unit, and he was like, I'm going to go ask for medicine. And his brother's like, don't fucking do that. And he was like, they have one. I'm going to go ask. And he was like, don't fucking do it, Myron. And he was like, I'm going to do it. Fuck you. So he went, and this Nazi was there, and he was like, I'm sick. I think I have pneumonia. Can I have medicine? And that Nazi looked at him, and he said, let me show you something. And he took him to the ward, and there was like, he said there was like 4 beds that were just in perfect, pristine condition. They were beautiful. He was like looking at it going like, oh my God, I haven't seen a bed in so long. And the Nazi officer said, do you think anyone's ever slept in one of these beds? And my grandfather looked at it, and he was like, no. And he was like, yeah. So are you sick or are you not? And my grandfather finally got it. And he was like, I'm not sick. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Yep, I feel better immediately.
I feel so much better. And the Nazi officer gave him some aspirin of some sort, and he was like, here, go back to work. And he said it did help. But my grandfather did have scar tissue from that pneumonia. Like that was an injury he did have that he had. So now we're towards the end of the war. Nazis know that they're losing. So now they have to get all these prisoners back to Mauthausen. So now my great-grandfather and my great-uncle go on a death march from Vienna back to Mauthausen. And he said that he's like, we're pretty sure that it had to have been Easter or around Easter. And he said people in Vienna were coming out of their houses to like watch the death march, and like people were begging for food. And literally the citizens who were watching this literally would take their cup of soup and pour it on the ground in front of them.
Wow.
He was like, yeah, it sucked.
When you reduce people to subhuman, you take joy. And this is what the scary part is. The same type of person that runs around and like steps on snails and goes, they're gross.
Exactly.
That's the same type of fundamental flaw in your humanity, that you could look at people that you have deemed subhuman and then do something just to humiliate them and torture them. That's a fascinating level of humanity that I don't understand.
And my grandfather said now with like going back, he was like, if you sat down, you were immediately shot. So it was very important to keep moving. Now they get back to Mauthausen, and he was like, I knew something was weird because guards were running away in the middle of the night. People were abandoning their posts. Like we knew something was happening.
Endgame.
And then they said that they started to pump them full of saline solution because they wanted them to bulk up and look not as starved. And then suddenly, then they were raided by the Americans. They showed up, and they said like literally the Americans got there and they're like, hi, and literally the prisoners were just standing there surrounded by like literal piles of dead bodies, and they were like, yeah, we need to go now. They gave them their rations. Like the Americans were really trying hard. They gave them all their rations. They're like, here's some food, have it. And my grandfather said he had never been so sick when he had eaten because they hadn't eaten.
They hadn't had their body stop processing food.
And so now they were like, he was like, the pain we felt was so intense. And
I can imagine.
Guccio then had the idea of like, how about we go lay in that field? Let's go eat some grass. That seems to help animals when they get stomach problems. So let's do that. So they ate grass, laid there for 3 days. And then they were like, okay, I think we're all right. So then they go back, then they start just on foot heading home. And they get back to Poland. They head home and they find their mom. And And my great grandmother Helena didn't recognize them at first because they were so emaciated.
Yep.
I bet.
And so then his 2 sisters come home. Now, what his sisters had faced, they were victims of science experiments at the work camp.
Yeah, for a lot of people who don't know that, like Nazis did human experiments. It was truly a disgusting, horrifying time. And
there's a book called The Nazi Doctors, which is probably my biggest regret having ever read. It is an enormous tome. It is not an easy read for 1,000 reasons. And all you need to know is, yes, they sewed twins together to see what would happen. So that's...
I also highly recommend, if you want to read another dark book, is Did the Children Cry? They also talk about the Nazi experiments. It's dark, but it's worth a read. It's just know that you're going to have to put it down every once in a while. So yeah, somebody just mentioned Mengele. My grandfather in Auschwitz heard the name Mengele a few times, but never saw him. He
just
heard it.
makes my skin crawl, knowing that they were that close to just hear his name.
Yeah, they heard his name. But what my great aunts went through, and understand they both survived. They did both survive. They would, and again, this is trigger warning for anybody. So they would break their bones to watch how they would heal, to learn how bones healed.
That's like what they did to the Chinese, what the Japanese did to the Chinese by seeing what would happen with frostbite.
Mm-hmm.
And then my great aunt Donka, they took a kidney out of her to see if she could live with one.
Wow. Jesus Christ. I'm so glad you shared this story. I mean, as hard as it is to hear.
Yeah.
And think that this actually happened. I'm glad you shared it. Because like we said at the beginning of the show, these are the people that were awarded more rights and more dignity when they were taken prisoner after World War II than Donald Trump and his current administration are treating actual people, immigrants, innocent people.
Need to understand is that after World War II, you know, we talk about the Nazis and we talk about the people in Germany, but then we forget that after World War II, so many of them fled. And I'm not just talking about the ones that fled to South America and all that. I'm talking about a lot of them fled to the United States. Mm-hmm. And this is a country that we know we know that there is a huge and long-standing Nazi party or movement in America. We have seen it in the past. We've seen it now. It is
since the 30s.
Again, the idea that a lot of those Nazis didn't come to this country and embed themselves with their Nazi ideology and crafted all the things that they did to lead to this point would be just a fake logic that if you don't understand how that is possible and almost definitely happened, you're ignoring why we're here. There are so many factors that has led the United States to be where it is now. Not listening to history, not learning history, not understanding that history doesn't repeat itself in the sense of it's done and then it comes back. We're still living it. It evolves, and we've done nothing to hold off these ebbs and flows of fascism.
No.
My grandfather always said, he was like, "You Americans don't understand freedom isn't free." He was like,
"It's not."
That's what we always say. Democracy is not something you achieve. It is something you continuously participate in. Freedom.
Well, he also, when he first came to the United States, he said he was really shocked. He said he was dumbfounded. That like we called our on how so he came to the United States in like 1950, and he said that he was so taken aback by how we treated the Black community and how we treated women. He was like, he was like, "Are you fucking shitting me?"
Welcome to America.
Welcome to America. He said he was so taken aback because he was like, you know, he would hear people like obviously say horrible things about somebody with like a different skin color, and he was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You label yourself like the land of the free, and that's what you say about your neighbor."
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
And he said like with how people treated women, like women are only good for this, and he'd be like, "We have women doctors. What are you talking about?" He was like, "My sister fought in the underground. Are you kidding me?"
Thank you so much, Sally.
He was always like, "This is gross." So anyway, so back to my great aunts. So those are the science experiments they survived, and on top of which we know my great aunt Olka, she was part of a like horrific like big rape that the Nazis did to like a lot of the women. Like they were like a group of women were like captured.
Yeah.
Really bad. So Olga, so then they all find their way back. Obviously their father doesn't come back, and they had no idea what happened. And at this point, my grandfather was like, he was angry, which is understandable. He was very angry, and he was like, "I want to go kill people. I want to go kill people. I want to maim people. I want to make people hurt. Let's do it." And so that was his vibe. And then my great grandmother, Helena, took him aside, and he was like probably about 15 at this point. And she told him, "Mirek, if they have taught you to hate, then they have won the war."
Wow.
And said up until his very, very last day, he was like, "That my mother saved my life that day." He was like, "She did."
That's amazing.
And the thing, like, I know we need to wrap up. One thing that my grandfather always said that I do think is a very, very important lesson that we all need to remember is he always said, "I was not a victim." And he was like, "I wasn't." Now, the reason he said that, because obviously he was a victim, but the reason he said that was, I signed up for this. I chose to sign up and be in the underground. I knew there would be a consequence if I got caught. Yep. I understood that. He said the victims were the people who were punished just for being who they were. Yes. He said people, LGBTQIA, disabled, Romani, witnesses, like he was like, they were the ones, they were punished just for being who they were. And he was like, they were the victims. And he always made that very, very clear whenever he talked about that.
That's a brave distinction. I think it's easy to lump yourself in, but at the same time, that's coming from someone who's never had to make those choices to defend, to survive, to fight. Yeah. And that's a distinction that I think most people, especially here today, don't even understand. I don't truly understand it.
It's hard to wrap your head around something this bad. No, I'm just saying it's hard to wrap your head around how something this horrible could possibly happen. But
I think the point that you make about it being a choice that your grandfather made, great-grandfather, grandfather?
No, my grandfather, yeah.
Sorry.
No, and my great-grandfather was there too. So it's all of them all together, but my grandfather, yeah.
The fact that it's a choice, I don't know, and I think that goes back to if your country's invaded, you choose to fight or you don't. I don't know that people in this country are aware of the choice that's being made for them right now or the choices they're making. You know, I'm not saying any of us right now are amongst the bravest that'll come when people are really fighting in the streets. But right now, just speaking out is a risk to some degree because we're seeing what's happening. They're testing the waters by taking people off the streets. When you're here on a legal visa and they're kicking you out of the country, that's an illegal act. Okay, so they're seeing how far they can get with people that most people won't complain about. But what's going to happen next is when people are really starting to talk out and they're here because they're citizens and they start kicking them out or putting them in camps. And that's when we're going to start to need to see people making choices. And I think a good way to start is to go to a protest. And I think we should end by talking about what people can do. How can they get involved? Do you have some upcoming protests? Is it going to help if people just go and stand in a group and listen to speakers?
It does. It honestly really does. Because one of the things that like Matt and I talked about with like staging our protest, which we're in the middle of talking about making another one as well. The thing is that it's about sending a message to the rest of the world to go like, yo, we're not for this. Because right now, I'm like, I don't think people understand how much like ammo we've got pointed at us right now. People don't understand that it's like, we have to let the rest of the world know, like, guys, we are not for this. We also, I mean, I live in New York City. I live in my little liberal bubble and I fucking love it. When I stand and I protest and I am live streaming and I am saying these things and I'm showing the group, I'm letting the people know who are in the middle of a red state, who are terrified, who are isolated, that are like, you are not alone, honey. Like, we are here for you. It is letting people who are being targeted know that we have people who are standing up for you. It is, and yeah, it does. It's people protesting is a bad look for your country. It's not a good one. So it does do something. It is a bare minimum that we can be doing. There's so much more, obviously, but protesting is absolutely a message that people need to do. And the fact that they are arresting people for protesting, I'm like, what better red flag do you want? Of where we're heading in terms of like, and if they're arresting people for protesting, that means the protesting is working.
They're scared. They're scared.
Didn't they be like, sure, make a mess? But I think this is all leading, something Jeremy has always been talking about, and I'm going to botch the word, is this is moving towards Trump's Reichstag moment. Because someone said it earlier, the people who are protesting in this country, the resistance here will be called the domestic terrorists. And then we will be targeted for speaking out against the wonderful American regime that is Donald Trump and the Republican Party. I think it's important that they are setting up something.
They were considered terrorists.
Yep.
Yeah. The Polish underground was considered terrorists. It was considered illegal.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we don't have any more time. This has been one of the most amazing stories. Like, I barely even said anything the whole time. I'm just listening. Like, I want
part two.
How? No, I know. I want to see the movie. I don't care if the movie comes out. Please just cast me. I don't even get. I'll cast me as a dead body. I don't even care. Just as long as I get to be in the movie.
I mean, we didn't even talk about then what happened when after Yalta, when Poland was basically sold to Stalin as a bargaining chip.
How about this?
World War II.
Oh, of course.
We didn't even talk about what my grandfather did then.
We'll have to do another one. We'll have to do more. Definitely. We'd love to have you back on.
And what I like is I want to do a part 2 like this one, because I just want to hear more of this story. And then I would love for us to be able to not monopolize your time, but get more of it. And I want to talk about protesting and how it is vital to every successful anti-fascist movement.
How about this?
I think that's going to be a big deal. What were you going to say?
How about this? The next episode that we do together, we'll do the part 2, but then we're going to also show you exactly how it parallels with the Trump administration, because today was more about history.
Yep.
I wanted to show you some videos on, how Donald Trump is for these types of things, eugenics, stuff like that. So maybe we could do that on the next episode for sure. Thank you so much for coming on, Laura.
I mean, like, my grandfather, like, he never really liked Trump at all. He never did. But
I'm
I
sure.
remember specifically when Ukraine was invaded and, like, watching, especially, like, I remember that moment. He was like,
I bet that was a chilling moment.
He said he was like, he was living with me at that point, and he was like, he was terrified. He was like, no, Trump is not business as usual. Holy shit. He knew it was like, he felt scared dying because he was like, he knew he was leaving like my mom and I and my uncle to deal with this, and he was
still
like,
wanted to fight.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was ready to fight.
Stop that man from flying to Ukraine at 91 years old. He was just like, no, I'm going to go. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, right. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna
do? Ukraine right now. I appreciate. He was about to go rip into fucking. It was his like.
Okay, if you make a more fantastical telling of the story, please let that be the ending of the movie. 91 years old, go to Ukraine, just to fight.
Like, I'm still one of them.
Yep, that's the ending. That's the ending. That's epic.
Oh,
that would be a help. That would be.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I thank you, Laura, so much for taking your time out to come on the show today. Laura will be a speaker on April 30th in Washington, D.C. Mike and I are slated to be there. We still have a lot of fundraising to do because this is not going to be a cheap trip because it's going to be a couple days. We're going to have to stay at a hotel. And for some reason, I'm now helping organize. And they've asked me to be the person to speak to the media.
That is a major mistake, in my opinion.
What could possibly go wrong? You know what I mean? No, I'm kidding. I'll be professional, I swear. No, I know I talk a lot of shit online, but when it comes down time to stand on business, that's what we're all about. So I joke with them too. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure nothing bad will happen about that. But no, they because of what we do, and the VOR podcast is going to be listed on all as like a media outlet that promotes the protest and everything like that. So it's a big deal.
That first protest, Laura, we have become obsessed with letting people, you actually brought it up without us saying it, letting people that aren't in areas that have these uprisings, I think we should start calling them, maybe not protests anymore. It's important for people to see it that don't know what's happening. It's important for people to see it who know what's happening but can't be there. We need this reinforcement that there is a resistance, there is an uprising to this fascism, and I think it's critical that every independent media outlet do their part in showing these protests.
Yeah,
we have to force it, and it's like I mean, because I'm thinking of like the person who like I'm thinking right now of like of someone who's trans in Arkansas who's fucking trapped right now.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Terrified out of their goddamn wits, and it's like letting them, and it's like, look, at least it's like letting them know that it's like, we are here, we're trying to do something. You are not alone. You matter to us. We see you.
Yeah.
It's not enough. It is not enough, but it's like we have to at least do the bare minimum, and protesting is bare minimum at this point.
I agree.
It's vital, but it is the least we could do, but we have to do it.
We have to do it. And it's people are not understanding what is happening right now, and it is page for page the Hitler playbook. and it is going to start getting really bad. I mean, I think right now they're waiting to see what happens with the special elections in April.
Yep.
And
it's not going to go their way.
It is going, but if it does, but here's the thing: if it does go their way,
then
the cascade is going to happen.
Oh yeah,
and
it is.
We are in the next year. We are going to see some shit go down. But I will say, I was raised with very intense hope core. Very intense. My grandfather was very much, you never give up. You never surrender. And his motto as in the camps was, I'm not going to let the bastards get me. And he's like, I'm not going to let them do it. And I do encourage everybody, do not let the bastards get you.
Put that on a shirt.
I agree. And like I said before, I mean,
do not let them teach you to hate.
No.
Don't let the bastards win. And that is what we have to live by.
Yeah, Amanda. Yeah. Amanda pointed out it's only been 3 months. But their blitzkrieg is failing. Is failing. Like Donald Trump is not at a physical, like the blitzkrieg was, they just attacked at all angles and overwhelmed the opposition. That's what they tried to do with all the EOs and all that stuff. And Elon Musk. Yeah, I heard that. I heard that he's stepping down. Well, I mean, it's a shit show. They thought they were smart. They thought they could pull this off. Obviously, most of these people have no clue what they're doing. And they are failing. But a lot of people are going to get hurt. People are already dying in concentration camps, which is what they are in the United States.
Concentration camp because we have a Gitmo is a fucking concentration camp.
Yes, it is.
We have a concentration camp in Miami where 3 people have already fucking died.
Yep.
I put out a thread and I got a lot of shit for it, and I do not give a fuck. Was I said when Gitmo opened, it felt like Auschwitz reopened. The amount of people who gave me so much goddamn shit for that, and I'm like, no.
It's literally the perfect analogy. It's literally the perfect analogy.
Laura, I'm sure a lot of the anger you got was people going, you can't fight this. That's not fair. That's diminishing. No.
Yeah.
What you did is see that it has to start on day one and grow into what it becomes.
I had family die and be tortured in Auschwitz. I am half Ashkenazi Jewish. I'm like, fuck you. I have every single right to say that.
Yep. My mom never met her real parents. I never met my real grandparents. Yeah. You know what I mean? I know nothing of my family history because most of it was erased by the Nazis.
Let's not talk about what they're building in Texas and Arkansas.
We'll get into that in another story. So, all right, I got to go too. But thank you guys so much for watching. Laura, that was even better of a story than I thought it was going to be.
All day.
I know, because when you spoke, you only got a chance to speak for like 5 minutes, and having you on here for an hour and just letting you go, oh my God. That is one of the most epic war stories I have ever heard. And I love war stories. I don't
say I know that like my grandfather, as he got older, he got comfortable talking about it a lot more. I know he would have loved talking to you too, and he would have enjoyed it.
That would have been so dope.
Well, if you guys do want to see, and this is for anybody to know, if you do go to my TikTok and there's a playlist called Grandpa on it, you can hear my grandpa giving the stories.
Yes.
So,
what?
Yes, on my TikTok. He used to come when he was alive. He would come on my TikTok and answer questions. So if you want to hear my grandfather talk about it's all on my TikTok.
Absolutely, guys. Speaking of which, your TikTok.
Grandpa.
Yep, your TikTok and her YouTube page. The links for those are in the description of the video, as well as all the links for our social media. Again, if you guys want to donate, because we are trying to take this to the next level. I'm so tired of having to go slow at this. We need to accelerate this at such a pace that we have to supercharge this somehow. But if you want to donate, please do so. Any amount is fine. If you can't donate, we completely understand. Shit is really rough right now. Just like, subscribe, share the video. Any interaction with the video helps with the algorithm, helps push our message out there. We don't need. That's the nice thing about these days is you don't necessarily need a huge budget in order to make an impact with social media and everything. But for the things we want to do, like bring protests to you, travel the country, doing different events, and obviously getting better equipment and becoming like an official studio with contributors that make videos for us and all that stuff, working as a team to bring people together. That's the end game. That's the goal. And I know I dream big, but you know what? I'm tired of just trying to do things the way everybody wants me to do it anymore. Yeah, so thank you everybody for watching. Laura, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you having faith in a couple random guys you met at a protest. It's very nice of you. I'm glad it's worked out, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Other than that, everybody, enjoy the rest of your